with? Okay, there are a lot of charities who work with blind and partially sighted people, but RNIB is the largest. The Royal National Institute of Blind People is our latest version of our name. We do change it occasionally. Originally, we were set up specifically to deal with blind people and all the daily living needs that people had. But very quickly, we broadened that out to work with people who are partially sighted. And at the moment, we deal with anyone where sight loss is an issue. So a lot of our customers wouldn't call themselves blind, wouldn't call themselves partially sighted, but they have something going on with their sight that causes a barrier for them. Because of that, we changed our tagline a couple of years ago, and we now use the phrase "seeing differently" because I think that sums it up. We're here to support people who see differently. So that's RNIB. Very briefly tell you about myself. I'm part of RNIB's specialist employability team, and I've been with RNIB for almost 20 years. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'll be on a 20-year anniversary. So I've been around working in employment during that time, and I almost got to the stage where I actually know what I'm doing now. That's a long-term aim for me. So today we plan to talk about Inwork Support. The majority of the inquiries we get to do with employment come into our centralised helpline. And our helpline sight loss advisors deal with the majority of those inquiries. So if someone has a straightforward question to do with keeping their job, they'll get an instant answer from our helpline. If it's something a bit more complex or needs a bit more time input to it, then that inquiry passes on to our specialist employment team. We've got a network of around 12 advisors who are very experienced working with people with sight loss. And amongst other things, these advisors work individually to help people with the aim of trying to keep them in the jobs. So we do a lot of in-work support, specifically supporting the employee. And you'll obviously no doubt see there's quite a distinction between supporting an employee and supporting an employer. Individuals come to us, employees come to us to ask for help if perhaps their sight changes or the systems they work in change, the environment they work in changes, they get a new manager, the job changes. People can come to us with just a one-off issue, or we might work with them over a lengthy period if there's any ongoing issues there to be working with. So while we spend a lot of time helping employees, we also support the employer. Employers ask us for advice sometimes about an individual. They might come to us with questions about occupational health. To be honest, occupational health advisors often tell an employer to get in touch with RNIB. So we get those kind of questions. We're often asked about work areas. Is this the right area for someone to work in? I mean, a physical area. We also get more strategic inquiries. So a lot of employers will come to us and ask us about the recruitment systems. Are they inadvertently putting barriers in the way of someone applying for a job? Or questions about safety. We don't do risk assessments for employers, but we often talk to them about things they could do to keep people safe. So we're here to support employees and we're here to support employers, and that can be a difficult balance at times, particularly if there are any problems between the two. So we have to tread a thin path there between the two of them. I'm going to mention later on our resources, but one that's worth pointing out at the moment is we have a booklet called Let's Work Together, which I really like, and it's aimed at an employer, because an employer will often say, I really don't know how to talk to this person, or I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm scared I'm going to discriminate. So there is a booklet called Let's Work Together for employers, which I think is really helpful, and that's available on our website. So yes, we do Inwork Support, and if you're working with a customer and you help them into a job and you have any kind of aftercare for that individual, and issues are coming up and you're not sure how to deal with it, please come to us because we'll support you with that. Adjustments. The next thing I just wanted to talk about here was adjustments. So access to work obviously is a big thing. and we encourage people to use Access to Work. And if you've never come across Access to Work, I do recommend you do some research on it. It's a DWD programme that can fund adjustments, particularly when someone's new in a job, within the first 6 weeks. The individual applies for Access to Work, but the employer is quite often the one that receives the funding. So let's say, for example, someone needs a bit of software in a computer to make it easier to read or listen to. These things are quite expensive, but Access to Work will fund 100% of the cost when someone's new. They'll also pay for training. They will it'll all be part of a support package for someone. But not every employer uses Access to Work. The government departments, for example, aren't eligible for the funding. They can use their assessment service, but they can't pay for equipment. So we're often involved in advising people about how to get hold of the money, or what kind of support to put in place. Technology, a big issue for people with sight loss. So there's hardly any jobs now where someone doesn't have to log on to a computer at some time. So we're often advising on software to change the way a screen looks, or listening to a screen content, or using magnifiers or digital aids to convert written material into audio or other forms. So we're often asked to advise on that. It can make such a difference to someone succeeding or failing in a job. We're often asked about the working environment. So loitering is a real big issue for a lot of people. So it can be as straightforward as, where should I sit? With open plan offices, there are lots of limitations. People who are working out of doors in the summer may have more difficulty with bright light. So we're often asked about changes to the working environment. Support workers are often, we should say, we supply some of this ourselves, but we tend to be signposting employers to other places to get the support once they've got the funding in place. Support workers are used when technology can't help. So if, for example, people has to read a lot of visual documents and the technology doesn't cope with it, we often recommend that they apply for funding to get a human to do that part of the job. And that can be quite tricky in some working environments. Some employers straightforward, others have real issues about confidentiality and so on. So we're often asked to advise on that. Travel can be a barrier in itself, and you know yourselves, depending on where you're based, then public transport can often be either not there or pretty bad. And if someone loses their driving licence, they can have all kinds of difficulties. So we do often advise on there is funding available to help people travel to and from work, or travel as part of their job. And often there is mobility training. So if people want to start, for example, to use a long cane, a light cane, need some training on how to do that. So people are applying for guide dogs, for example. There's a whole pack of training that comes along with that. So we can keep people right in that. And awareness training, a big one for us, because it's hugely expensive. It would be lovely if we could go to every workplace and do a 2-hour session on, what is sight loss and what does it mean, and how does that affect people, and how do you get around problems. But the cost of that is prohibitive. So yeah, we can do it. Or often we have local partners that will help with that. We are currently developing an e-learning package for employers as well. You may have seen our training for employment professionals. So we've got a separate one. It's going to take another couple of months, but we think that will help us to reach a lot more people. So yeah, they're the kind of adjustments that we're often called upon to help with. And you can imagine if you need 2 or 3 of the things off this list and you're starting a new job, you really do need that Inwork support, particularly at the beginning, to get you going. Okay, resources. If you've been to any of these sessions before, you're probably sick of hearing about our online resources, but we do have a lot on there, so it's worth me mentioning it. Our RNIB website can be quite challenging to navigate around. we think we get it right, and then suddenly someone changes something somewhere. But although we have a lot of resources aimed at you as employment professionals, we also have similar resources for employers. So there's a lot online about dealing with application forms and interviews, and trying not to put a barrier in someone's way. Tests can be such a horrendous barrier to someone if it's sprung on them at the last minute. If we know it's coming, then it's okay. We have plenty of resources about technology in the workplace and what can be done to make life a lot easier for everyone. In the past, we used to have technology officers in RNIB who are quite brainy and very good with computers that went in and advised people, but we don't have them anymore. But the companies that sell the software always have technical backup to help with that. So it's about pointing people in the right direction. Making systems accessible is just an ongoing issue. You know, you can come across a customer who will work happily at an employer for 10, 15 years, and then the computers are upgraded, or they get a new customer management program, and it doesn't work with their software. So, you know, making things accessible is an ongoing challenge for every employer. We've got some resources there about how people are trained. So it's very easy to sit with someone down in front of a computer and open up an e-learning package and say, you must do this by Friday. If you can't see that, if it's not been designed properly, then that can be a real challenge. Face-to-face training works very well, obviously not in our current climate, but there's some few steps that trainers can take just to make everything clearer to everyone else. So we've got plenty of resources advising on that. We do have some coronavirus guidance on there as well for employers, but I think that changes every week, so it's hard to keep up with it, as well as changing between countries as well. It's something there. We also have introduced a thing called the Visibly Better Standard, which is a bit similar to disability confidence, where an employer wants to make all the systems right. They can apply for the Visibly Better Standard, and our team advise employers on what steps they need to take to make sure that they're able to recruit and able to retain people in the jobs. That we haven't had any, it's very early days, so no one yet has signed up for that, but we've had a lot of interest from big companies who would like to do things better. So we hope that will improve things in the longer term. There'll be occasions when employers say, I need you to come out and visit me, spend a lot of time talking to the individual in the workplace and come up with a report for me in detail about what we need to buy, where we get it, and how we justify everything. That's a big time commitment for that. So at that point, we will ask employers to pay for our time. So we call that work-based assessment service. It's an add-on. We'll do the work anyway, but if an employer can fund some time for us, we are a charity after all, then we'll do a formal work-based assessment. That can be useful, particularly if they're looking for funding in other places, or if there's any disagreement over what people need. So that is an option that we have for employers. Okay. Resources. Again, as I said earlier, if you've heard any of our previous presentations, you'll know all about this, but just to point out some of the things that we have there. If you go to RNIB and then search for employment professionals, and you'll find our employment assessment toolkit, which is really useful if you've got a customer and you're just not sure what direction they should go to. It will help you to sort of come up with an action plan that works for that person. We have a lot of pre-employment resources in there. So if your own resources aren't readable for any reason, then you can use the resources on our web pages. And also our e-learning. I just wanted to update you on that because I'm sure that some of you will have used our e-learning. But we've had a package running for almost 2 years now for employment professionals. We've about 2,500 people have used it, and the feedback we got from it is that people find it useful. So if you haven't yet, have a look at our web pages. It's free to register for. and it really will give you some in-depth support. At the same time, we recognise that employers need that, so that's under development, will be coming soon for employers. Again, we expect that to be free. And the third employment package that we have almost ready, should have been live on Monday, but it's been delayed for a bit, is for job seekers. So I'm hoping that will be a useful resource for you, because you'll be able to say to your customers, if you go to this web page and self-register, you can go through a job seeking learning course online. It's fully accessible, and people can dip in and out of it whenever they need it. If they want to do the full thing, that's fine, but if they only want to work out how to write CVs, there's a section on that. There's application forms, interview advice, behaviour in the workplace, health and safety at work. So there's quite a bit in there that will appeal to job seekers, and that is coming any day now. Hopefully, could go live today, fingers crossed, but that's coming. So yeah, there are always resources there, and I think it's always important that you know how to get hold of us. So all of our inquiries are centralised. If the person you get can answer your question right away, then great, you'll get an instant service in there. But if you want to talk to someone a bit more in depth about a customer or about an employer and about the support that person might need, then just contact us through the helpline and ask to speak to someone in the employment team, and they'll do a referral through. There aren't as many of us in the employment team as there are on the helpline, so we don't have set response times, but we do it centrally, because if someone's on holiday, then we'll make sure your inquiry goes to one of our advisors without having to wait for them to come back. So I have very rapidly gone through my slides, so I thought this is probably a good time to answer any questions, or if there's anything that I've covered that anyone would like me to go back over.
Hi, yeah, there's a question from Leslie Oswell, who said she would like to understand or get some more information on the standard that you mentioned. So is there a resource link or anything more that you can add?
Yes, it's not been publicised as yet because we're trialling it with the first employers. But if you're interested, if you want to drop me an email, I'll send you what I have at the moment. My email address, it would be nice if it was on the screen here, wouldn't it? But
do you want me to type it into the chat for you, Andy?
That would be ideal. So yes, Leslie, send me an email and I'll reply to you and send you what I have at the moment.
Okay. I'll just wait and see if anybody else has got any questions.
This could be a record-breaking lunch.
So let's get, there we are. I'm just getting Andy's email address so I can pop it up there. There we go. So I've popped this in here. I've got a question for you, Andy. It is to do with something you've talked about regarding software that you mentioned for supporting those with sight issues or difficulties. As an organisation that support employability practitioners, we are aware that there may be those out there that have this disability also in terms of their working environments. And can you recommend, is there an app or something that can be put onto a PC or a laptop that can support the verbalisation of things that are shown on screen?
Yeah, Microsoft has always been very keen to improve their accessibility, but it's been very gradual. But I think looking at Office 365, if people are accessing that just now, it's a massive leap forward. Windows 10 in itself, people who maybe need to just magnify the screen a little bit, or change the colour schemes, or change the mouse pointer, or reduce the brightness, so much of that can be done through Windows 10 now. So there's really no need to go and buy anything. Windows 10 in itself, massive step forward. And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but the Office 365 programs now have accessibility checks built into them. You can either turn it on to work all the time, or if you produce, say, a PowerPoint. So this PowerPoint slide that's in front of you, when this was produced, we then went into the accessibility checker and it told us what we'd missed. So, and that isn't just for sight loss, that's for all kinds of disabilities. So I do recommend, if you're using Office 365, have a look at the feature called Accessibility Checker. And it's in all of the programs. It's in the review section. So if you're going into spell check, it's in the same place as that. And that's in Word, PowerPoint, Excel, anything Microsoft. So that's only from Office 365 almost. And that is a massive help. Because just to be told you haven't put the right information where you've used an image, and it helps you to actually fix it as well. So I do recommend that. Other than that, I think you're starting to talk about buying apps or programs, and that can be complicated and expensive. So I think it's always a good idea to either look at our technology information online or phone our helpline and just say, I'm thinking of something to help an individual to do this. We might try and sell you it because we do have an RNIB shop, but that's not the initial point. The point is to give you some advice. And some simple things. If you email people, keep them plain text. If you're in a Word document, use a size 14 fonts and a non-serif, sans serif, I should say, font like Arial or something similar. Most people with sight problems are going to be able to read that. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and just for anyone else there, you know, because we can all have different levels of technical ability. I would totally recommend Google searching how you find the accessibility functions within your Windows or Word documents and watch a YouTube video and teach yourself how to find it. A couple more things have come into the chat box. So Darren has said, one of our staff is partially sighted. We received an access to work recommendation for equipment to be bought, and this was assessed by an RNIB assessor. Our employee said it was substandard equipment and we ended up buying a higher spec. The employee was quite annoyed that we hadn't gone through them personally to ask about specs, and it was frustrating for both parties. The employee stated that the assessment was entirely wrong. So I'm guessing what Darren is looking for is some guidance about if you go into this sort of thing again, how is the best way to go about assessing somebody in terms of their involvement and their autonomy in that?
Yeah, I'm not sure how long ago that was, because RNIB used to personally do access to work assessments in different parts of the UK. We haven't for some time now, and that's more of a resource issue for us. Some access to work assessments I've seen are absolutely brilliant. Some I've seen are really poor, and we have been trying to speak to Access to Work. We're on their forum, and we've been talking to them about standards of assessment over quite a long time. If RNIB did the assessment and it wasn't good, I would be really interested in finding out more about that, because we have to.
Yeah, Darren says it was 2 months ago, and I recommend, Darren, if I've popped Andy's email address in the chat box. Please do take that now if you want to copy and paste that into another document for yourself, and reach out. And he's just said, will do, thank you. Kim Tillman has said that she's registered blind and she does use Dragon software, which is the speech to text technology. She said it is very good, but it's time consuming to use, and I suppose that's another factor to put in place, is the fact that you may need flexibility of time, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good point, Kim. And Dragon, it can be a very good product, and it can also be notoriously difficult for people with any form of sight loss, because so much of the editing is very visual. But I'm not knocking the program. I've seen it work really effectively with JAWS, for example, which is a screen reader, but it does need a third-party piece of software to get it to work really well. So I'm hoping that continues to work for you, Kim. And if you do have any problems, please let us know.
Tony Jo Stables has sent a link into the chat. She's just said that they are a disability confident leader employer, and they have sent a standard to our management to see if they would be interested. So Tony Jo, perhaps again, that's something you could pick up on email with Andy if you want to have a chat with him about that particular standard, and send him the link that way.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear from anyone who's got any queries.
Okay. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to, while we've got Andy at our beck and call, potentially for another 15 minutes or so, you know, any questions you might have, any concerns about supporting either a customer or an employee with a sight loss or impairment?
I think from my point of view, if you've been working with someone for a long period of time, you've seen them move into a job, hopefully you'll be continuing to provide support to that person, but by all means phone us up. If there's nothing we can do to help you, that's fine, but sometimes just having that experience of dealing with the same kind of issues that come up, we can share that experience with you and we'd be happy to help you. Okay, all right, well, thank you sincerely, Andy, for your time today. We really appreciate having you here on the Live Learn Lunch. To everybody here as well, thank you very much for your time, for taking the time to attend this session. As always, it's been recorded and will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel, so please do go and find that, and also subscribe so you can get notifications when new content is made available to you. There's the episode 76 is next week, and Helen will be back in charge to support the presenter on that day. So thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks very much again to Andy. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks everyone. Take care. Right, Andy, I'll be with you in just a second. It's okay, Emma. It's quite scary when it says talking Helen. Yeah, I know. Right, so everyone else is gone now. So how was that for you? That was good. I know it was too short. I hope that hasn't caused any problems. But just stop the recording actually.